This is an episode of Decisions and Dilemmas. We're at a bit of a crossroads and it's time to call the experts. Hi, Todd, it's Maya. In the tall trees where the coyotes howl and the frogs sing into the night, there is a big metal shed, and inside is a boat. That boat is where this story takes place.
Decisions. I hate making decisions because this is what takes the most time. And of course, until you get to having made a decision, you don't get to work and to proceed. So honestly, whenever I have decisions to make, I prefer building more shelves. Another shelf has grown since we arrived to this new dilemma, and you are handcuffed and cannot continue. So yeah, I like making shelves. It will prove useful for once we have made a decision.
You are so funny.
We were initially thinking of replacing the entire decks. The reason of replacing the decks would be to get access to the half beams which support the deck. And some of those need replacing, and the best way to do that is from top access, so once the decks are gone. That is the biggest reason. So we initially thought that would be worth the time and the money. But the biggest problem is that our lady here was built in the 80s and the construction method varied from how they are built now. Basically, this is built like a traditional wooden boat, and underneath paint and what you see here, there is a skeleton holding it all together. And this skeleton is put together by a beam shelf which runs longitudinally from stern to bow. And on that beam shelf, which now you can't see, there are half beams going across. And those are the ones that support the plywood deck. And instead then what supports the cabin top is a beam that starts at the front of the cabin top and ends where it ends, of course, and it runs longitudinally, and that is a carlin. So the half beams, they are set into the carlin and onto the beam shelf, and they run this orientation. To stiffen up the whole thing, there is a blocking which sits on the beam shelf and goes from half beam to half beam. So right here is a blocking. So where it gets tricky is that on the new boats, the cabin sides are attached sideways onto the carlin, and that means the plywood decks are set on top of the carlin, and you can remove the entire sheet of plywood by cutting straight down the cabin top sides. Now the difference on these older boats that makes removing the plywood a lot harder is that it is wedged in between the carlin and the cabin sides. So instead of being attached from the side to the carlin, the cabin sides, they are sitting on the carlin, but they have the plywood running over them first. So by making a cut here, I'm not exposing the full plywood, but you would have to go carve that plywood out. Or you have to jack up the whole cabin top to get to the full sheet of plywood.
So, and as you can see, this is a huge project. Essentially, our decks are sandwiched in between the cabin side and the carlin. So this is where we really need advice, because there may be an easier way. I know that Todd at Cape George Marine Works has probably done this job to several older boats, so I'm sure he knows the best method to go about this. And the other dilemma is this necessary? Is this strictly necessary to rip up the whole deck? There are some areas where the half beams are rotten and discolored enough to really warrant doing it. So would it be better to just do those isolated sections and then leave the rest? But there are enough isolated sections that you start to get to the point where you're like, well, if we're doing it here and here and here anyway, then why don't we just do the whole thing and have a boat that we know is solid and new and we know exactly how it's done. So that's the big dilemma, and that's why we'd love to get Todd's opinion, first of all, on is this necessary to do everything? Would he only do sections? Would he just say, leave it entirely, fill it with epoxy, whatever? And secondly, if it is necessary, what's the best method to do it?
Now, one option that I do see is hoping for the best for the half beams. So leaving them in place so that it's not required to get the entire side decks off to be able to remove or replace them, hoping that they are good. And instead making a cut at about a third of the decks, the side deck width, longitudinally of course, to get access to all the blocking and just replace all the blocking. That is one option, because now it's a hodgepodge and a bit of a mix. And the blocking, unless we cover them, they would stay visible. So that is one option. And by removing that, you get access and you can see the sections that you don't see now of the half beams. But that's where it really gets tricky, because once I start seeing some that I don't like, then you start wondering on how to get them off and how to renew them. I mean, to get something out is always easy. The thing is, how do you want to perfectly get something in? If you're starting to go in at an angle or from above or from the sides, that means it's a little bit smaller than original if you actually want to make it fit. If you want to make it fit to original specs, it has to go in like that. But yeah, let's see what Todd tells us here. I'm sure he has done this lots. That's what he does.
So in the meantime, while we wait to hear back from Todd, we have to still keep busy, and so we've been doing lots of things actually. One of the most visible might be that we removed all these slats in the interior. They are just attached to the hull and make things look prettier, so now the hull looks considerably less nice because it's just bare fiberglass. But we want to get access to everything to really see the condition. The other thing that we did is we removed the engine. It was heavy, but Aladino removed pretty much everything he could remove from the engine and emptied all the liquids, so it wasn't as heavy as an actual full engine. And so it feels good to have that gone. Here, you want to peek into the engine room now? It looks really cool because it's just an empty space. There definitely is something really satisfying about having an empty engine room. This is where Lynn and Larry Party had their bathtub, and indeed it would be a great space for that. It's big and spacious, you could have a beautiful bathtub in there. But we will be getting an engine. We really appreciate having a strong and reliable engine that can really take care of us when we need it. We consider that to be a big safety feature, so we will be installing an engine. Now, welcome to the cockpit. This is the source of our next big dilemma, and this is also something that we've been working on while we wait for answers about the deck. Now, I'll explain what we've been working on before I explain the dilemma. Basically, we're just removing the teak, and the reason for doing that is because, as you can see from all these holes, the teak has been screwed down, and it provides a lot of different spaces for water ingress. So since we're doing all this work on the boat to prevent rot and to prevent water ingress, one thing that we can do is remove the teak and then glue it back down. Fill these with bungs, but not with screws, and then we have a bit more peace of mind about the teak. Now, removing this teak deck is actually not a very easy thing to do. First of all, it just takes forever to drill out all these bungs, but second of all, we found out that this teak has actually been both screwed and glued to the deck. So it's on there real good, and getting it off is a bit of a challenge, but it's worth it to us because not only do we want to really seal the teak, but we also want to get access to the plywood beneath, because we're really checking to make sure that everything is watertight, and there are surprises to be found everywhere. For example, back here, just behind the coaming, we cut a piece away and we found, you guessed it, rot, which was completely invisible from above because it's painted and it looks all nice and nothing's bubbling, but there's rot below. And the other reason why we are removing the teak is because we are considering changes to the way that the cockpit is constructed, and this is where the dilemma comes in. So Aladino and I actually have slightly differing opinions on what the ideal cockpit configuration would be. There are some things that we can certainly agree on though, and the first thing that we can certainly agree on is that the current configuration is really not great for storage. This is our only cockpit locker, and there were two big propane tanks in here, so there was you couldn't put anything else in there. Back here, there's one locker right in the middle with a very narrow access, and this is right underneath the tiller. And our tiller cannot hinge up and down, so this is always going to be a huge pain in the butt to get the lid off and to shove whatever we need to shove in there underneath the tiller. So that's a huge problem. Under here is the quarter berth, so there's certainly going to be less storage there, but we are considering moving the quarter berth forward a little bit, so at least we have some storage sort of in this aft section. And again, over here, it would be nice to have a locker as well. So all those changes we'll make. Now, where our opinions differ is how we rebuild the coaming. And first of all, I just want to make very clear, because anytime Deanie and I have like a differing opinion on anything, we've got commenters sort of trying to take sides and turn it into a whole thing. And it's really not that. We work really well together, but what we really need to do is talk to people who have both configurations and from their experience decide which one's the best.
Exactly. Some honest pros and cons that they have to live with having either one of them.
Our disagreements at the moment are, I would say, ideological.
Not having experience with the one, but just thinking that it has more benefits.
Totally. So, my preference would be to rebuild the coaming more or less as it is right now. Just a full coaming all around. And my reasoning for this is that I really like having this somewhat enclosed cockpit because it helps to keep it much drier. When you've got waves coming over the bow and the stern, in my experience on Magic Carpet, having that cockpit coaming there means that oftentimes you'll have a wet deck from waves, but the cockpit will be dry. And I think that's really quite invaluable. Now, Aladino's plan is based on pictures we've seen of multiple other Cape Georges. So this is not like something he just dreamed up. This is something that's in use on other Cape George boats. And that's basically to have these coaming sides slope down and then curve nicely outwards along this tape line that you can see here. So it curves outwards, you add a scupper here so that water drains out here. And then this whole aft section of the coaming is removed. So that this whole aft section is all one big platform. We can put teak on the whole thing, and you can have big locker lids. The big benefit to this is you've now got this really lovely platform, both for storage and for all the activities you have to carry out at the stern. Setting a stern anchor, setting a drogue, coming into a harbor and attaching the mooring lines from the stern, catching a fish. All those things make it really, really lovely to have this big platform at the stern. But my main concern with that is that you're going to end up with a far wetter cockpit all the time, because anytime a wave comes over the stern, it's going to be directly where you're sitting. And anytime a wave comes over the bow and sort of sloshes around, I think that this little corner here, the wave will hit and then bounce, and you're going to have like little fountains coming up here. But this is not something that's based on experience, because I've never sailed a boat with this cockpit configuration. This is based entirely on theory. So to settle this debate and decide which the best thing is, we really need to talk to some Cape George owners with this cockpit configuration that Aladino is talking about, who have sailed in blue water, and learn, did they find they have problems with a wet cockpit? Because if they didn't, then I think that this solution would be a way better one. Mm-hmm. Anyway, one thing we could do to mitigate this is cruising boats often have sort of canvas cloths on their stern pulpit which wrap around, and that's to prevent spray. So that could be a really easy way to just mitigate that problem from the get-go.
And I think really those go way higher than a coaming, and
Totally.
that would prevent much more moisture than a coaming does anyway.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if I see kind of the wave slapping, it's going over into the coaming too. But
so that's another decision to be made. Like I said, this is an episode of dilemmas and decisions. So now we just have to work on removing this teak. It's a bit of a mission because, like I said, screwed and glued. We've removed the screws now, but now we have to get at it with a fine and carefully remove the planks, because we certainly want to preserve them. It's actually incredible. They're 1/2-inch slabs of teak, which is amazing. I mean, you never get that anymore. So we've got to very carefully remove it so that we can put it back on. And if we do change the cockpit configuration, we'll probably have to buy more teak, which is crazy expensive. But fortunately, it will be for an extremely small section here. This is really not much surface area, so I think it would be worth it. Wow, what a difference!
Yeah, right?
And that was quite a mission to get off, wasn't it?
Yeah. Tiny mission compared to the new one that I have. Come visit the yard today if you want to meet Grumpy Dini. Damn it.
Not Grumpy Dini.
Well, the next mission now. Basically, I'm taking off piece by piece, methodically, more or less how it was assembled. So we get to the plywood underneath.
You're taking the teak off.
Well, to get onto the plywood.
Yeah.
Exactly. So next step is taking the teak off. And I've tried to get at it from here first, but basically there are these cover boards made, but only being able to cut up from down here, it's not enough to get it loose. So and there is no other way to start unless I would start here, but if I remove this one, then I cannot really continue. So by taking the coaming off, I mean, that's not only why we took it off, but by taking it off, now I can go into the teak planks sideways with the fine and then remove one by one as I can get to them. But it's so annoying. It's the most annoying thing we have tackled so far. As amazing as a find is, it makes a whole lot of noise, a whole lot of dust, and this is glued down really well.
But we can do it!
Yeah, we have to do it. This is so much precious teak, and just in general, I mean, make Save the Teak a mission. There's not much of it, and whatever we have, however old it is, we should try to reuse it as many times as possible.
Especially since this teak is so thick.
Yeah, and this is really thick, but it's a real pain.
We can do it. It'll be several days of torture, and then it'll
on to more torture.
All right, let's get to it, my love.
Did you notice the difference?
Yeah. The fine started smoking. I don't know. Oh, jeez. That's really bad.
Can I open it or not? What do you think?
Yeah, because we're not sure. Does opening it mean voiding the warranty? But also, what is opening it going to achieve? It's clearly burning. I mean, at this point, I think it's a warranty case.
Yeah. Annoying.
Very annoying.
We need 3 at hand, because I mean, even if warranty replaces it, then it's going to take a while till it shows up, right? And we need to continue tomorrow.
I know.
So 1 day later, not much more teak is removed, but it doesn't mean I haven't been at it all day. So our initial method was using the fine and getting underneath the planks and removing one by one was the idea. It didn't quite work, and the fine went up in smoke. So we are getting a new one, but as I am waiting, instead of twiddling my thumbs, of course I could be doing other things, but I want to tackle this. So I have another idea. One was to get it all off in big sections like I managed here, but it's going to be harder on the bigger sections. And once I get it off, it still is a huge mess that needs to be cleaned up before it is usable. And since it is the sealant between the teak has to be renewed anyway, I thought I want to try a new method now, and that is with the router.
Sometimes things happen beyond your control, as if they have a life of their own. The choices you make, what appears to be right, seems you just have no say. As if you're a witness to your own mistakes, it's easy to play along. After you see what the choices came to be, like a storm that's passed on. Oh, the brain, down the drain, oh, the fuse, the abuse.
And also this teak is made with a rebate, and you can check out a previous episode that we made on teak deck maintenance, and there I explain why I personally prefer getting rid of a rebate. So yeah, my idea now is try to use the router, dig those grooves out all the way to the end of the teak, and that is 1/2 inch. And then we'll still see how we go about removal. Either we try to pry one by one off, or we get it all in sections. Maybe it will fold like a harmonica. That part I don't know yet.
Before I fight, you're wrong, this fight is lifelong. See the water flowing under bridges. Time, my friend, has come to pay its due. Show its use. See the sheep, they're grazing on the ridges. Our friend the wolf has come to show a new beginning needs an end.
It's again 1 day later, and we have pretty much attacked these teak planks with every possible way that we could, besides just using the Sawzall and ripping it into pieces. I am really happy with the little plunge or trim router, and I did get all the seams and the rebate off. So now it's a smaller surface that it's sticking to. We tried with the heat gun, which usually works really well. And as you can see, we did it on this plank here, and we stopped here because of course here we cannot play with the knife and the heat gun to like get any further. So this one is still attached, and we abandoned. We said this is we were on it like for an hour.
It was so slow, and it needed both of us, so it was just not super practical.
So I went back to the initial technique of hammer and pry bar. I was always hoping to become Aladino the Adventurer and not Aladino the Barbaric, but oh well, if this works. Let me continue, but have a look. This section's pretty loose.
Oh, nice. So that still means that that'll be a lot of work to get that fiberglass off so that the planks are usable again, but...
Yeah. And basically, I mean, this is really the barbaric example, but this is how you do teak decks often nowadays. You have it fabricated in a place not where the actual boat is built, but you have it all done with CNC or just like to exact measurements, and it comes on a fiberglass, like just very, very thin sheet, but it like ties it together and you can already put the caulking on it. And then what you do is you just place that whole teak puzzle, like this could all have been made in one piece somewhere else.
Yeah.
But they know, oh, Cape George 36, these are the measurements, and like when you do production boat, and then you just add some glue and like a carpet.
Nice sound effects.
Yeah, well, that's the accurate sound effect. So my idea was like, wow, I get it off like that, and then we just sand it from the backside, and we redo the caulking, and we put it back on, but it will be different.
Yeah.
And first, let's see if we get it off.
Yeah.
Painful.
Yep.
It's like golf.
Like golf. Oh my god.
Oh,
You missed.
and I thought I can move on to tasks where the machine does the work. And not this machine.
Oh goodness, you're in quite a mood today.
And we've chiseled the perimeter and here, so to separate it. And now that I get the bar underneath, we would want it to come off as an entire thing. But we decided this is a unit that we're trying to get off, and this will be another thing. So here and here, those two perimeters here, we have routered a little bit deeper so to get to the plywood, and hoping that the fiberglass would separate here and this comes off as a unit. That's the game plan. Let's see.
All right.
Oh. Ow, ow.
You okay?
Yes. Oh. Looks like
It's getting pretty close, hey?
Aladdin, the barbaric magic carpet laid in teak is coming off. His carpet laden in teak. Oh god damn it, this is a sad mission. I would have... The boat really didn't come with anything. And this is the one item that's an extra that it came with. Like, wow, 1/2 inch teak. And it's so sad to get off. Oh.
Well, but this is why we're doing it this way, is to try and use it again.
Yeah, we're trying, but it still is painful. Because, of course, it's never gonna be the same.
I know.
And let me say it again. This is the last resort method. Don't do this at home.
treat your plywood, your teak kindly. You're taking on candlelight dinners.
Wow. That's satisfying though, hey?
Yeah, more than when I got one slat off in 3
Well,
pieces.
this one slat, we were both working on it for what, like an hour?
Oh yeah.
And we got it part of the way off, and now in 15 minutes you've got this whole panel off. That's pretty crazy.
Ooh, smell it, that fur.
Just be careful of that one board we did get off, Aladino, because
Yeah.
it's gonna tear off on something.
This is what it looks like. Not too bad. We'll sand this as low as possible and then add a layer of fiberglass. And then, I mean, if it's going to be used in this way. I am kind of thinking this is the quarter berth, we're sticking with one. The only reason is that it might get shorter, so we might cut this off. But this is too hypothetical at the moment.
Yeah.
We are deconstructing and it's no way time to think about the decoration. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
And when we were doing the bulwarks, I thought there is hope that one day I might be hired by Cape George Marine Works. Definitely not anymore showing this performance.
This is a hard job. I don't know if anyone has a great method for removing glued down teak in one piece.
Yeah, it totally depends on the sealant too. I did have much better experience with Sikaflex and the heat gun and like a spatula. It actually does go like and it all comes off. But I don't know what this is.
It didn't respond very well to pretty much anything.
No, and there's too many screw holes. As you pry, the screw hole of course is the weak point and then it crackles and not shoon.
Not shoon indeed.
Not shoon at all.
Alright, time for the outro. So my initial plan for this episode was to end it once all the teak was out of the cockpit. And we haven't quite gotten it all out yet, but it's been such a saga and such a frustrating process that this feels like victory enough to end the episode. Now, of course, the big mystery with the deck is still pending. We have an appointment to go to the Cape George yard and talk to Todd and ask him about our questions and queries. Will bring photos of the boat. So the next episode will have sort of that story and that conclusion. I'm hoping that Todd's okay with me filming sort of parts of his explanations to us, but if he's not, then of course I would respect that. So I can't guarantee at this moment if we'll have footage of that or not. But in any case, we should have a few answers and a bit more clarity to share with you next week about the decks so that we can get started on those. And until then, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to everyone for giving a thumbs up and commenting and subscribing to the channel. We publish a new video every Friday. And an extra big thanks to our patrons for making every one of these videos possible. Our patrons do get lots of behind the scenes bonuses, including a real-time update every Tuesday during on season when we are working on the boat. And that real-time update, they're all there available on Patreon. So if you want to see some sort of less edited, more off-the-cuff videos and updates about our progress in real time, you can go check out the whole back catalog on Patreon. And as well, that's what keeps the show alive. And of course, an extra big thanks to these folks whose names are appearing on screen for going above and beyond to make sure that our show keeps being produced. And we'll see you all next week.
Whee! I guess I won't ask you what you're doing down there.
Yeah.